expected to last at least 12 months, whatever that medical issue may be to qualify. It's got to be 12 months to be eligible for disability. Um, each state, when you apply for disability, and nowadays, for the last few years, uh, you essentially now, when you apply for disability, you're going to go online. You're going to go to ssa.gov, which is the Social Security website, and you're going to apply online. When you go to that website, you'll see the disability icon, and it's pretty straightforward. Um, you also can do it, you can still do it the traditional way, and you can do everything over the telephone by initially calling the Social Security helpline, which is a toll-free number, and then they will set up a phone interview with your local Social Security office. And that will, and when you do that local telephone interview, that will initiate your claim and start the claim. Each state, the claim from SSA will go to the DDS, the Disability Determination Service. Actually, each state has a state agency, a state government agency, whose sole mission is to process disability claims for the Federal Social Security Administration. And different states have different names for them, but generically they're referred to as the Disability Determination Service, the DDS. And essentially, the determining disability is based on a sequential evaluation. Is the person engaged in substantial gainful activity, i.e. Full-time work? Does the person have a severe medical impairment? Does the severity of the impairment meet or equal a listing? For anything that can be disabling, be it physical or mental, there are what are called the listing of impairments that list the requirements to be found disabled. And I'll go through the evaluation in a minute, but and then if you meet the listing or equal a listing, the case is over and you will be granted benefits. If you do not, then you go on further. And another Social Security term of art, does the person retain the residual functional capacity, RFC, to perform any past relevant work, depending on your age, or to perform any work? Residual functional capacity is essentially your physical or mental ability to function. And then finally, given the person's age, education, and work experience, does the severity of their physical and mental impairments preclude any other kind of substantial work which exists in the national economy? Substantial gainful activity, as I've said at the next slide, if, and I notice my slide here on the next slide, Emma. One more.
One more. I apologize. Okay.
Yeah,
there
okay.
we go.
And I need to update my slide, but essentially Social Security will consider you engaged in substantial activity. And as it states here in 2018, if your gross earnings, not your take home, your gross earnings in 2018, it was $1,180 a month. Currently for 2020, if your gross earnings are $1,260 a month, they consider you engaged in SGA. And if you're earning more than that and you file a claim for disability and they see that, and they will they are able to determine what your earnings are. They won't even look at the medical issues. If they see what your earnings are and they're above that threshold, they go no further, and they will they deny the claim based on that. Regarding what a severe impairment is, uh, and this is true, almost any physical or mental impairment is considered severe if even if it has just a slight effect on your ability to work. Um, um, to meet a listing, and we'll go to the next slide. Uh, there we go. Uh, Again, the listing of impairments under the Social Security law are lengthy and expansive. And essentially, when putting this together, uh, it gives examples of various medical conditions by body system and describes what sort of evidence or clinical data is needed to determine that a person is disabled without considering any additional factors. An impairment not listed or a combination of impairments may medically equal a listing. And there are separate listings for adults and for children. There's a set of listings for adults and a set for children. And again, if an adult does not meet or equal a listing, you then go back to that sequential evaluation and look at steps 4 and 5. Essentially, a child must essentially meet or equal a listing to be found disabled, although there are other things that an administrative law judge, if the case goes to that point, will consider. Going to the next slide. Now, the listings, and I've put the listings that apply for hemophilia. And again, they're numbered. And the primary listing is 7.08, disorders of thrombosis and hemostasis. And the kicker here, and honestly, I've been representing the hemophilia community for many years now. The great majority end up going to a hearing, especially these days, the last few years, going to a hearing before an administrative law judge. Because in this listing, if you're reading it, the requirement is 3 hospitalizations within a 12-month period and occurring at least 30 days apart prior to adjudication or a decision being made. And each hospitalization must last at least 48 hours, a couple of days, and that can include time in an ER before being admitted or being at the HTC and then being admitted. And again, the child listing is now identical to the adult listing. It didn't used to be, but within the last few years, they essentially made it identical to the adult listing. It's much more difficult to get the benefits granted for children in the last few years these days. Not to say we're not successful in doing it, but it is much more difficult these days with kids because of that identical listing now, and because the factor treatment is, I'm talking to people constantly now that are on, and I hope I don't mispronounce it, a new treatment where they're just infusing once a week. They're just doing prophylaxis, the Hemolibra, if I'm saying that correctly, where they're doing that once a week. And anyhow, another listing, going to the next page, and 7.18, and repeated complications, and they list things here, and that involves pain. I know for older members of the community, the joint issues, the pain issues are very much a reason, and just the ability to move around and to overcome the pain issues. Uh, I often win cases for those reasons. And then especially just because of the, the lifelong condition and what members of the hemophilia community have dealt with throughout their lives. And you reach a point where you're limited in your activities of daily living, social functioning, and just the ability in a work setting to remain on task, to keep up and keep pace, and to be productive. Going to the next page, and I was touching on this, another listing 1.02 talks about the severe damage to the joints, the chronic joint pain, and limitation of motion, and other abnormal motion of the affected joints. And it lists the criteria here for upper extremities or lower extremities. Going to the next page, disability is again, as I mentioned earlier, it can be a lengthy process. You file an initial claim. A person will file an initial claim. Looking at this chart where you see the 22%, that is the percentage of people that are granted disability benefits at the initial claim level. So nearly 80% of people, all people, for any reason that file for disability are denied at the initial claim level. If you're, and the system, this is unwritten, but the system is almost set up to discourage people. And I always stress with all of my clients, and I have clients, it's unique. The Access program is the only legal aid program that's a national legal aid program, I believe, in the country, where I've traveled all over the country prior to the coronavirus pandemic. I'm traveling 2 or 3 times a month from California to Maryland, representing people at hearings, representing members of the hemophilia community at hearings before Social Security federal administrative law judges, trying to get these benefits granted. The 2%, after the initial claim, if you are denied, you then file the first appeal that's called a request for reconsideration. That 2% is the percentage of people that are granted benefits at that level, at that first appeal level. Obviously, and I tell everybody this, if they deny you at the initial claim level, chances are they're just going to rubber stamp that and deny you at the recon, as we call it, level. Both those levels are at the DDS, the Disability Determination Service. They make both those decisions. If you are denied at the reconsideration level, the first appeal, you then appeal again, and you're at the 3rd stage. And that second appeal, you request a hearing before an administrative law judge. And at that point, an additional 12% of applicants win their cases before an administrative live judge in a live hearing. As I was saying, I go and I'm there with the patient client. We're arguing our case to an administrative law judge. Now, to look at it a different way, most people who should get the benefits, and a great high percentage of people that should be approved at the initial level or the reconsideration level are still denied. But most of the time at the the hearing before the administrative law judge, benefits are finally granted. On a national level across the country, the ALJs right now, they approve of the cases that go to ALJ, administrative law judge hearing. The national average is it's between 40 and 45% of people are granted benefits. These other two numbers are the reasons for denial. So it is a tough process. However, last year, Access, my office, we were successful in 70% of the people that we represented in the disability process. And hopefully, I'll be honest, 10 years ago, we were in the upper 80s and even 90s, but they keep changing the law to make it more difficult, but we still go head on, and again, we're still, I believe this year we will be in the 70 some odd % of successful resolution of cases as well. And at one of our final slides next, again, what we do, we provide direct representation to people seeking federal disability benefits who have certain rare chronic conditions. Of course, hemophilia was how we started many years ago. And then we have a legal support hotline that you can call about any legal issue, and I will try to answer it, or I can do some research. I've been doing the disability work for many years, and then my background, I was a criminal defense trial lawyer for many years. So hopefully you don't have to call me about any of those issues, criminal defense issues, but so you can call me about any issue. It's primarily about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Family Medical Leave Act, the ACA, insurance questions about access to insurance. But again, you can call our legal support line for any legal question, and maybe I can refer you to a local source, or I can answer the question. But again, I'm being a lawyer, you specialize in certain things. Going to and again, just to reiterate that, we've been working with and representing the hemophilia, the bleeding disorders community for years now, and our services are at no cost. We waive all attorney fees and actually medical record fees and fees of any kind to provide this service. And I take great pride in the uniqueness of our program and the work that we do. Going to the next page, currently we are a staff of 3. Me, Kathy, our disability specialist and paralegal, and Carolyn, our receptionist and office clerk. Primarily, some of you may be familiar with Bill Leach, my longtime colleague, and he was the senior attorney. He retired last year, and for the time being, it is just us 3. We hope to add another attorney at some point in the near future. Our last slide is our phone numbers, which is our general line, the 888-700-7010 number. And then again, also toll free, our legal support hotline at 877-851-9065. And that's the presentation. Thank you all. Be here all week.
Thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate that. It was very informative. We do have a few questions. One is, how is COVID affecting the Social Security hearings right now?
It has had a major effect. As I said earlier, um, I would travel all over the country, and it's it's important to be there with your client facing the judge. Now, prior to COVID, they have, because I often go to very rural areas. And in fact, I want to call it Western Maryland. I've been to some
Hmm.
pretty rural areas in
Yes, yes.
Western Maryland. But so it's important to be there. However, and my last trips, I remember I took back-to-back trips and both were, I had to fly in somewhere and then drive 150 miles. One was to Kentucky, one was to Alabama. And my last trip was mid-March of
Wow.
this year. And then at that point, all hearings that had been set were canceled. And now everything, as far as the hearings, since beginning things were shut down for a few weeks, but now all hearings are done by telephone.
Okay.
I'm in my office. The patient, my client, is at their home. The administrative law judge is at home. And then the hearing and the vocational expert that they always have at hearings, they're at home. And it's just a teleconference.
Wow.
I'm not, I really think in doing a hearing, and again, this comes back to my trial experience back in the day, all my trial work, when you have a jury and you want to see that person. However, my numbers are about on par, but all hearings for right now, and again, since the end of March or April, have been straight telephone.
Wow.
When I and they and the Social Security Administration, or what are called, the judge's offices are called the Office of Hearing Operations, the OHO, and they don't want to give up any information. And occasionally I'll talk to somebody, and they're all working from home. All OHO personnel are still at home. Um, Even now, most regular Social Security offices are not open to walk-in traffic. People retire every day and they want to go down to the Social Security office and sign up for the retirement benefits. Or, a Social Security office always has people with issues that need to be addressed. And now, just with regular Social Security offices, they want you to try to resolve any issues online through their website or by telephone. And I think in certain circumstances, you can make an appointment to come in. And again, I looked all that up a few weeks ago. There may have been changes, but quite honestly, COVID is surging all over the country, so I doubt there has been.
Yes.
So currently, these hearings are by phone. I don't like that, but we don't have any other choice at this point. And again, I'm still having success. I was concerned that it would give a lot of these judges, that they would deny even more cases than they do, but they haven't been.
Well, your numbers are quite impressive. So you're doing a really good job on behalf of the community. We appreciate that. The other question that I have is that if you have a child getting SSI, do you have to requalify them for benefits every year? And I'm thinking this means, do they have to meet those requirements of the number of hospitalizations, et cetera, each year?
No, if your child is granted benefits, SSI benefits, you don't have to meet those requirements every year. However, and this is another thing, traditionally, the DDS traditionally they are supposed to, and different parts of the country or even different parts of a state or jurisdiction, they review your case to determine whether you remain disabled. Uh, and they'll review your case. They're supposed to pull current medical records, and they'll often decide, oh, this person has made medical improvement and is no longer disabled. Traditionally, they would do that every 3 years. Just recently, they changed that regulation and they want it done now every year,
Wow.
which is a real hardship on people, if not for the stress alone.
Right.
So no, you're not going to have to requalify as a child receiving SSI will not have to requalify every year, but there's a possibility that after 2 years you may get reviewed,
Mhm.
to determine whether whether the child is disabled after 1 year. And I've been dealing with that, and Kathy has been dealing with that because children have been reviewed and said, oh, they're not disabled. There may have been issues very early in life when the the, the condition was unknown. If it's what do you call it, a spontaneous case where
Mm.
they're not aware of a family history,
Right.
and that can lead to, I've represented infants that have been granted benefits, but then after a year, 2 years, uh, and even 3, 4 years, once they're on a good prophy regimen, um, if they're reviewed, they may be, um, uh, their benefits may cease. And also, this happens to everybody. Um, Many children, and it's so beneficial to the family. It's so helpful. I can say, as a youth growing up, I received government benefits that my mother was able to save that allowed me for my education, that allowed me to go to college. She was able to save a good bit of that that allowed me, to attend college. But with SSI benefits, when the child turns 18 or 19, they're between 18 and 21, they're always their benefits, they're going to be ceased. And you can fight that. I represent quite a few people. If it's nowadays, if it's feasible, if you get notice that they're going to cease your benefits, you can appeal that. And in fact, you can ultimately go to a hearing before an administrative law judge to stop, to have your benefits continue. And I represent people at those hearings or through that process.
So they automatically stop them when your child turns 18? That's an automatic thing?
No, it's not an automatic. You will receive notice that we have reviewed, because it used to be the rules changed
Mhm.
from childhood to adulthood for hemophilia. The criteria for disability was different for children, and I still have that set in my mind than it was for adults.
Mhm.
So because the rules change, again, once you technically become an adult, they would move to cease your benefits, but it's not automatic. You get notice.
Okay.
We are reviewing your case to determine whether you remain disabled, and then they'll send you a notice. We have reviewed your case and find that you are no longer disabled under our rules, and then you can appeal that. And a cessation of benefits appeal, you actually can. And I just won one of these. Uh, Actually, it was a young adult, and it wasn't, and it was a young adult who they were trying to cease. And with that cessation process, you actually can have a hearing with that's not an administrative law judge. It's just a DDS worker who gets the hearing, or the title hearing officer. And I was able to, and they're even more informal than ALJ hearings. And it was a hemophilia case, but I was able to bring in the HTC social worker who was great, who won the case. I could just sit back and I won't
They
mention
know those
it.
patients best. I feel like the social workers, they really know
Yeah.
what their patients are going through.
Oh, they do. And
Mhm.
I wish I could have them as witnesses more often.
Right.
But we were able to prevail at this in a very short time, before just a regular DDS claim examiner or hearing officer in that case. But yeah, you have appeal steps you can take if they try to seize your benefits.
So no, I think the key is that if someone were to get this kind of paperwork and they don't understand it, to reach out immediately so that you don't miss any kind of deadlines or anything.
Absolutely. And in fact, with a cessation of benefits, if you get that notice and then you will get a notice saying we are ceasing your benefits. Normally, you always have 60 days to appeal. However, with a cessation of benefits, you can have your benefits continue while you appeal that decision. Um, and but to have them continue, you have to appeal and affirmatively state, probably in writing, I want my benefits to continue. And you have to do that within 10 days
Oh,
of
wow.
getting
Okay.
that notice. And again, the appeal process can take a year or
So if
longer.
you lose the appeal, do you have to pay those benefits back?
That's the kicker. Yes, you do.
Okay.
They will seek repayment of all of those benefits.
So you need to be super confident in your
Yeah,
case, I feel like.
yeah, you do.
Okay, let me see. And then to reiterate, someone asked a question, if you charge, there is no legal fee at all for access to assist with these cases, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Now, how do you choose which cases you will take and which you don't?
Right now, honestly, with the just being me
Mhm.
and we're just being the three of us,
Yeah.
um, we do have to vet cases to a deeper level,
Mhm.
and every case is unique, and it's there have to be disabling issues. I often and again, with a genetically inherited condition, there may be a family history of receiving these benefits. And sometimes there's a mistaken belief because it is a very rare, the hemophilia community is an elite small community.
Yes.
Uh, and sometimes there's a belief that I have this serious chronic condition and that alone will get benefits granted. And unfortunately, that's not the case. You have to
Right.
meet a lot of criteria, and essentially, there there have to be bleeding episodes. I look for uh, the hemo, the joint damage in adults, and often, like I recently lost a SSI, excuse me, child case. We lost, and I thought we should have won because the mother works full time, single parent, and and devoted parent, works her butt off to support her child, but she could not leave him in regular child care
Mhm.
because of his condition, and now she has to pay even more for one person to look after her child, and she pays substantially more
Right.
when again, she's like many of us living paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
and
Yes,
and
it's
that
very
case
challenging.
should have been won, but we did not get as with many of the administrative law judges, they lack empathy
Mm.
from my experience.
Now, is when you get benefits, say you are disabled, but you're not completely unable to work. You can still maybe work a few hours a week. What is the cap on the amount of earnings that someone can earn while receiving benefits? Or can you?
And again, you can work being on Social Security disability. You can even work, but it's nominal when you're on SSI. And there's mathematical formulas, but for SSI, they lower how much your SSI benefit is. And again, Social Security disability, your benefit is based on your earnings. SSI has a cap. The maximum amount that a person can receive on SSI is around $780 a month. You can still work part-time on SSI, and there's a formula, and they reduce for like every $2 you earn, they'll reduce your SSI by a dollar. And then there's other income that they don't count, and it's a formula. However, as long as a person on SSI remains eligible for $1 per month, they maintain Medicaid
Okay.
eligibility, and they still have their Medicaid coverage, which is the most important thing for so many people. With disability, as I mentioned during the presentation, the substantial gainful activity amount is $1,260 per month, gross earnings. And if you're on disability and you earn less than that amount per month, technically it shouldn't affect your disability status.
Okay.
I tell people, and I know this, if you're making just underneath that threshold, that 1260, it probably will raise a red flag and you'll be reviewed sooner than you would have been. But, yes, you can still work part-time on disability and earn underneath that threshold.
Okay. That's good clarification, because I think sometimes people worry, how will they survive just on the benefits alone, because they're very nominal. So it's good to know that you can.
Right. The average, one thing to know about disability, because I represent people that are getting close to retirement, and you can start accepting retirement at age 62. However, it'll be a lot less than if you wait until your max retirement age. With disability, your disability benefit is actually almost the same. It may be a little less than your max retirement age benefit would be.
Wow.
So I've even represented people that took Social Security at age 62, because if you take it at your retirement at 62, it doesn't go up when you hit 66, and my max retirement age is 67. It doesn't go up. However, I've represented people that were 63, 64 to get that. You do get a little bit more of a benefit. But again, your disability benefit's almost the same as your max retirement age benefit.
Very interesting. Well, that is the last question that I have, and I think this presentation was super informative. So with your permission, it was recorded through the platform. We'll keep it live on our site for 60 days if you're okay with that.
That's
people
fine.
Can come
That's
back
fine.
and view it. But Terry, thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to join us, and we really appreciate it.
You bet. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed talking to y'all.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful